church tries. We really try to do our best. We're small, but they know that I believe they know that in the church they're really kind of connected with their ancestors very much, and in the church there is life, there is hope, there's joy, there's the deep felt assurance that Yaakov vek milos Jego, unto the ages is His mercy.
Суровый и прекрасный край, историей мозаикой дарованный, укутан тихим океаном невзначай и снежными горами коронованный. Народы малые, дитя охоты и рыбалки, воспитанные вьюгами и штормами, природой, одаренные смекалкой и душами навеки добрыми. Священник православный говорит: «Мой дед шаманом был и духов вызывал. Сейчас Аляска христианской верой дорожит, но духи живы, и никто их не прогнал. Пусть гуманизм святого Германа и Иннокентия Святителя на всей земле свою победу правит, ну а Аляска в качестве учителя достойно может этот путь возглавить». На суровых просторах Аляски, среди островов и заснеженных гор, начала свой путь одна из самых уникальных епархий православной церкви в Америке – Аляскинская епархия. Здесь, где природа испытывает человека на прочность, вера стала опорой и путеводной звездой для тысяч местных жителей. История этой епархии – это история духовного подвига, миссионерского служения и неразрывной связи между коренными народами и православной традицией, принесенной сюда русскими монахами еще в XVIII веке.
Your Eminence, thank you very much for this opportunity to talk a little about Orthodoxy in Alaska. And so could we start with speaking about Alaska Diocese, so about the churches, for example?
Well, the Russian Orthodox Diocese of Sitka, Alaska is, of course, the oldest and most revered diocese in the Orthodox Church in America. It was a continuation from the Diocese of Irkutsk, and it is a diocese that has, of course, saints at its very foundation, Saint Herman. It has martyrdom, the blood of martyrs, Saint Peter of Kaguyak at its foundation. And of course, it has the Saint Innocent of Patriarch of Moscow, who is also, of course, was very much the enlightener of the Aleuts. We have Saint Yaakov, who was, of course, was enlightener of people in the Yukon and in the Kuskokwim. And of course, now we have Saint Matushka Olga. So I would start in speaking about Alaska in that this is a place that has produced saints. Sanctity comes through podvig. It comes through really hardship and asceticism. And this land, which is extremely beautiful, is also very harsh. And I believe that combination of harshness has allowed for sanctity to really blossom in the land of Alaska. Now, we have 80 parishes, but about 25 priests that are actively serving them.
How many churches are there?
There are 80.
80. And 25 priests.
25 priests. So a lot of parishes don't have liturgy every Sunday. Sometimes they'll have a reader who will do what's known as a biednica, which is basically the beginning part of the liturgy without of course, the holy sacraments.
So there are not enough priests, or is it okay at the moment?
No, there are not enough priests. There's a great need for priests, especially say in the Aleutian part of the Aleutian Islands, which is also probably the kind of the most Russian part of the Diocese of Alaska. In Alaska, really, the Russian missionaries came and they converted the faithful, but they converted the faithful by first listening to the faithful. They converted the faithful by loving the faithful. They adopted what was wise in their subsistence living. And the faithful also loved, of course, the Russian missionaries who came. So what happened between that and the fact that it initially began with traders who married into families was that there was a new identity that was actually formed, which became what I call a Russo-native identity. So that they're very much native, but there's the effects of Russian Orthodoxy are very much in the soul of the people here.
And the churches are still called Russian churches.
They're called, yes, the faithful, many of our churches, have that as their official title, the Russian Orthodox Cathedral of St. Innocent of Irkutsk, the Russian Orthodox Church of St. Nikolai, so on and so forth. But the people, if you will ask them, what is your religion, they will almost inevitably say they're Russian Orthodox. So that's how they understand themselves.
We heard something that the grounds that the churches still stand on, has something to do with Russia still. No.
The ground?
Yeah, the land.
Well, a lot of the lands were actually given at the time of the Treaty of Cession, when Alaska was sold to the American government. Provisions in the treaty allowed for certain church properties to be there to help sustain the church under its new government.
At the moment, there are no monasteries in Alaska. Do you have any plans? And the most important, do you think it's important to establish a monastery or not? So what's your attitude?
I believe it's important, and I believe, I'm certain if Alaska had not been sold, we would now have a number of Russian Orthodox monasteries on Alaskan soil. There is a small monastery that's associated with the Serbian church in the area of Spruce Island. And I would hope at some point to be able to have some monasteries in Alaska. We do have a few nuns who are kind of living by themselves, an ascetic life, but there are nuns that are associated with parishes.
And there are some very important upcoming events. And the one of the most important is the glorification of Blessed Matushka Olga. Could you say a few words about that?
Well, the glorification is coming up in 3 weeks. When I went to Russia the last time and I spoke with a number of bishops, a number of them were struck by the fact that it's the Matushka who's being canonized as a saint, and not the Batushka, not the priest. And but she was a very quiet, very humble, very loving, and very self-sacrificial woman who really became a Matushka spiritually, even physically, for everyone that was in the community of Kwethluk and beyond. She would, take care of people, and her presence, her very touch, could be healing.
Some miracles are connected.
There's many miracles. Women who were, in childbirth, they would often see her, beside them, comforting. There are mothers that have lost many children from miscarriages, and they prayed to her, and they were able to have children. There's women who've suffered, from terrible abuse and rape, who have, had visions of her and felt the shame and the pain of what they experienced being almost taken from them. So she's very much alive, and she is as active now as she was in life.
Святой Герман Аляскинский – первый православный святой Америки, смиренный монах, который стал отцом и защитником алеутского народа. Он прибыл на Аляску из Валаамского монастыря в конце XVIII века вместе с первой русской миссией и всю свою жизнь посвятил служению Богу и людям. Утешал, лечил, учил, заступался перед властями и жил среди местных, разделяя их трудности. Его подвиг – это тишина молитвы, любовь и свет веры, который до сих пор согревает сердца.
That's really impressive. And also this year, it is supposed to be the 55th anniversary of the canonization of St. Herman of Alaska. So how will it be celebrated?
Well, we'll of course have the pilgrimage to Spruce Island.
It happens every year.
That happens every year, and I think one can see really the fruit of St. Herman's own prayer, the fruit of his love for the Supyak people of Kodiak, that being extended now to, of course, Blessed Matushka Olga as being a fruit of his labors. I saw a kind of an illustration, a sacred illustration that has Matushka Olga praying before an icon of St. Herman. His work in Alaska continues to this day.
And so, what's the difference of serving here in Alaska from serving somewhere else? Are there any peculiarities?
Well, in Alaska, of course, all the parishes are on the Julian calendar, the old calendar, which is very important to the native peoples of Alaska, because of course the various dates are also associated with their loved ones, and of course, loved ones that die on a certain saint's day, or people that are born on a certain saint's day, and so they very much love the old calendar, and of course wish to remain on it. So whereas most of the rest of the Orthodox Church in America is primarily, not exclusively, but primarily on the new calendar. That's one of the differences. Another, I would say services and the divine services and serving in Alaska, probably it's a bit closer to the way the services are in Russia. And again, this is because of the not just the Russian influence, but because of the love of the people for what they received and their gratitude for what they received. Very much like, say, the Russian people held very tightly to the liturgy that they received from Constantinople. In a similar way, the native people of Alaska hold very tightly to what they've received from then Holy Russia.
So the parishes are mostly native.
Parishes are mostly native. The services are in English, in Church Slavonic, and in the native tongue as well. So that could be Yupik, that could be Unangan Tunu, and then sometimes Supyak as well. But and Tlingit in the south, some is used. Church Slavonic is something that really was what connected all of the native peoples, who a lot of them have mutually unintelligible languages. It was kind of the common language of something that all the natives shared. Also, the church is really important linguistically speaking, because after the sale of Alaska to the United States, the United States, of course, desired to bring all of Alaska into the melting pot of the United States. And so at that time, and this is like right after the American Civil War, it was thought that they needed to become Protestant, and they needed to only use English. So this meant that there was direct persecution on the native people for speaking in Russian or speaking their native languages, also often being beaten for such. What that meant was that the church was the only place where they were safe and able to be themselves. So they've preserved their languages very much in church, which has provided a kind of a shelter and a place of refuge in addition to being a place of sanctification.
Святитель Иннокентий Вениаминов, будущий митрополит Московский, считается великим просветителем Аляски и Сибири. Он прибыл на Алеутские острова молодым священником и, изучив язык и обычаи местных народов, перевел для них Евангелие и богослужебные тексты. Его даже часто называют аляскинским апостолом. Служение святителя на Аляске стало примером мудрости, терпения и глубокой духовной ответственности.
And if we speak about it, we can't but mention Saint Innocent of Alaska. And could you say a few words about his role in spreading orthodoxy in Alaska?
Yeah, well, what Saint Innocent did so very wisely was he came, and the first thing he did was listen. He listened very, very carefully. So carefully that it included learning the language, learning the way the native people thought, seeing what was valuable, precious, and beautiful in their traditions, taking their languages, making them into written ones. So Saint Innocent, of course, he very much honored the people. He was tireless in terms of going from village to village, and he, of course, formed a seminary in Sitka. He translated, so much of the, even the gospel into Unangan to Aleut, Unangan to Nu.
So he even invented the first alphabet.
He invented the first alphabet, and it's interesting. I've spoken to some of my priests who mentioned that their, say, grandparents would remember going to school. And they would go to school, and the teacher would be teaching them in English, and they would write down in English, but they would use the Cyrillic alphabet. So they would use what the teacher said was the wrong alphabet, but that was because that was actually taught to them at home by their parents. And they would, some of my priests remember actually using, say, singing in Yupik, but in hymnals that were written in the Cyrillic alphabet.
Уналашка – это один из крупнейших островов Алеутской гряды на Аляске. Это место известно благодаря своей суровой природе, крупнейшему центру рыболовства и уникальной истории. В конце XVIII века сюда пришли русские торговцы пушниной, а вместе с ними и православные миссионеры. Собор Вознесения Господня, строительство которого было завершено в 1896 году, считается одним из старейших православных храмов в Северной Америке. Его купола, устремленные в небо над холодными водами Берингового моря, напоминают о сподвижниках, принесших свет христианской веры на край земли. Собор Вознесения Господня стал духовным центром Русской Америки, а также символом взаимодействия русской и алеутской культур. One of the most ancient Orthodox churches is located in Alaska, the Church of the Holy Ascension. So have you ever served there?
Yes, I've served there a couple times. It's, of course, a very, very beautiful church, very much designed by St. Innocent. One thing that's extremely striking is in the middle of winter, The surrounding hills around the church, they're all brown. The grass has dried up because it's a winter scene. But in the courtyard, it's always full of flowers and fragrant. And that we see as a special grace of Saint Innocent. The cathedral, of course, it's a beautiful cathedral, and even the very icons he would chose, and there would be icons, for example, in the side chapels, which would have troparia underneath them, and he would pick the troparia which would be best for inspiring piety and love for our Savior and for the Mother of God, with great wisdom, great love, and great attention to detail. Really, given the difficulty of building in a place like Alaska, where there are no trees, or there are virtually no trees, to erect this cathedral is really quite a feat, and it's of course it's as beautiful as it could possibly be, and given what's kind of possible out there.
And the services are still held there.
The services are held there. We don't have priests now, so they have to wait for a priest to go out there, but they are still.
It's always interesting to know, maybe it's a bit personal, but to speak about your path to Orthodox faith. So how did it happen to you that you became an Orthodox monk?
I read Dostoevsky.
Oh!
And that when I was in high school, when I was a very young man, and I reread the section with the elder Zosima, Starec Zosima and Alyosha.
Oh!
And I immediately said that is Christianity as it should be. And I was determined to do whatever I needed to do in order to find it.
You've also been to Athens.
Yes, I was.
So you lived there for
I lived in Greece for 23 years.
Oh.
Yes, and I was on the Holy Mountain of Athos for 10 of those. I was in a convent of nuns as a spiritual father for another 13 years after that. And
was it difficult to change then life there into what is happening now here?
Yeah, it's of course it's a very, very different way of life, but God, there's a time for all things, and I believe this is what I'm called to do now. And so it's, a monk lives by obedience. He has, and now my obedience is to the people of Alaska, and the heart of, say, the monastic faith, the monastic way of life is obedience and prayer, and a bishop needs those as much as anyone else, and with those, God's mercy and grace offers support.
We used to be in touch with Archbishop David of Alaska. He used to be also the head of the diocese, and he always signed his letters "the servant of servants." So it reminded us of the episode from the Holy Gospel when Christ washes of that. So what's your attitude to that kind of serving?
Well, the bishop is really to be the father of the priests, and of course we saw our Lord, of course, serve the apostles, even washing their feet, but also teaching, also instructing, sometimes rebuking, and all of that's necessary as well, because the bishop serves, but the bishop has to lead, and the bishop has to for me, the model is more that of an abbot in a monastery, who watches over the fathers, cares for the fathers, cares for their financial well-being, their emotional well-being, their spiritual well-being. And I strive inadequately, not. I know that, but that's what I really strive to do. And so,
Do you have any favorite quotation of the Holy Fathers or from the Gospel?
Many times I have spoken and regretted it, but being silent, never. Which is kind of ironic with an interview that I'm doing now.
Who said that?
St. Arsenius the Great.
Oh, I see. Well, thank you so much,
You're
Your
quite
Eminence,
welcome.
for talking to us.